Listening.
The violent death of Christopher Marlowe on the 30th of May 1593 is the topic of a fascinating new play starting next week at the Playbox Theatre. With me tonight in the studio, I have the director of the play, Margaret Cruikshanks, and actor Peter Tomlinson, who plays the part of Marlowe. So, Margaret, the play begins with a murder.
That's right. The murder of Britain's most important 16th century playwright and poet, in fact.
At this point, everyone will think we're talking about Shakespeare.
But we're not. In the spring of 1593, it was Marlowe, not Shakespeare, who was the most popular writer in England. Though, of course, there are still a lot of questions about whether or not Shakespeare's plays were written by Shakespeare.
I'll come back to that in a minute. But there's still a lot of controversy surrounding Marlowe's death, isn't there?
Yes, indeed. Some people say that it was just an accident, and I must say I agree with them. He and his friends, who had been eating and drinking all day in a kind of restaurant, had an argument about the bill. There was a fight. One of them took out a knife, and Marlowe ended up getting stabbed. Christopher Marlowe was very wild, a bit like some of today's film and pop stars, and he often got into fights.
Isn't there also a theory that the people he was with had actually been hired to murder him?
Yes, that's right. You see, Marlowe was involved in black magic and spying. He knew a lot about some very powerful people, probably too much for his own good. The theory goes that they had him killed to keep him quiet.
But you have a different opinion about what happened, don't you, Peter?
Yes, I read a lot about him to prepare for the part, and the theory about his death I found most convincing was that he didn't actually die that night at all.
What do you mean?
Well, some people say that Marlowe pretended that he had been killed so that he could escape from England to Europe. He had been arrested, but he was then allowed to go home for a few days. That was why he was in the restaurant the night of the murder. He must have been terrified about what was going to happen in the trial.
And what does the theory say happened to him if he didn't die that night? Didn't he write any more plays or poems?
This is where I begin to have my doubts. As far as I'm concerned, he just disappeared. But the theory says that he went on writing and that he sent the plays to Shakespeare, who presented them as his own work. So that means...
I think that's going too far. There are similarities between Marlowe's plays and Shakespeare's, but they lived at the same time, they read the same things, and they wrote for the same theatre company, so it's not really surprising, is it?
No, not at all.
If Marlowe hadn't died or disappeared, do you think he would have ended up being more famous than Shakespeare?
Quite probably. He was better educated.